Donald Trump has repeatedly suggested that the election process is rigged.
What a rigged deal. I tell you, we're in such a rigged it is terrible.
And you got to watch your polling booths, because I hear too many stories about Pennsylvania, certain areas. So go and vote, and then go check out areas, because a lot of bad things happen.
We have to make sure that this election is not stolen from us.
Trump has gone further, encouraging his supporters to observe voters at the polls. 39 states have voter challenger laws. They give private citizens the right to challenge the eligibility of voters in person on Election Day. Contributing editor Alex Wagner of The Atlantic wrote an article. It's called Scare the Vote. She looks into Trump's claims and the lasting effects they could have on the future of democracy in this country. Alex Wagner joins us at the table. Welcome. Really good to see you.
Thanks. Always good to see you guys.
In the article, you say voter fraud is nearly 0% in the United States. Yet Donald Trump keeps raising it over and over, and the effects could be devastating to this country.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk a lot about what the long-term effects of 2016 will be on the American public, right? And certainly there's a pervasive sense that a lot of our systems are broken, that our institutions need overhaul. But the notion that the basic act of democracy, of casting a vote, is no longer fair, and that our elections in some ways are no longer free, which is the suggestion we've been hearing from Donald Trump on the campaign trail as of late. I mean, the long-term and even medium-term effect on our democracy could be profound. This is not a position that America, which is largely seen as a model democracy around the world, has
profound.
been in
How do you think? What do you think?
Well, I think, I talked to election watchers who've done this election monitoring around the world. I've talked to folks at the UN, and they said this kind of rhetoric that we're hearing from Donald Trump about the election is rigged in advance of the election, that is rhetoric that you hear from emerging and weak democracies. These tactics, and this is the front page of the New York Times, Iron Man rhetoric. This is what we hear from leaders like Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe. This is not the norm in terms of American politics, nor is the suggestion and the solicitation online, as the Trump campaign is doing, to send private citizens out to the polls to watch and see what their other fellow Americans are doing.
But on the other side, too, there are all the stories that the Russians are trying to influence the election.
And that absolutely, I think, is adding to this climate of insecurity and fear. However, the evidence is what it is. There, 1 in 15 million cases of voter fraud is statistically zero. It doesn't exist as a percentage of the American votes cast. Now, does that mean that our system is perfect, that we don't need better machines, that we don't need to increase voter registration and turnout and all the rest?
Or does it mean something has changed?
Well, I think that the question of cyber warfare and cyber monitoring is something that has broad bipartisan engagement. And that, I think, is actually a different issue than necessarily what Donald Trump is calling for. Private citizens can't do cyber monitoring in person at the polls.
But it's heating up as his numbers are dropping, too.
Sure. And that, I think, is not a coincidence, right? I mean, if things aren't going your way, challenge the results.
There's two really interesting things, too, which is, one, it is easier to vote in this country early. And we'll have as much as 40% of the vote will be early. In fact, there are many people who believe that Florida, North Carolina, maybe Nevada, Ohio could be decided even before the election. On the flip side, Republicans, for the past about 6 years, have made it harder to vote in person. We now have 34 states that require voters to show some form of identification at the polls. So there are so many restrictions already in place to make sure the vote is fair.
Right. And I think it is worth noting, as much as it is largely conservative-led legislatures that have moved forward these voter ID laws, Republicans, and this is being reported in Politico today, Republican elected officials and former officials are saying this rhetoric about the system being rigged is dangerous. There are people on both sides of the aisle that recognize the tenor in American politics that is being driven at this particular moment is not a good one in the long term for them.
And what will be the long-term effect, you think?
Well, I think, look, if you have a section of one of our two major political parties that no longer believes it matters or it is fair when Americans turn out to vote, the implications for that are profound. If you have people not participating in the democratic process, how do you have a representative democracy?
Yeah, and I just think how it's going to play out. I can challenge anybody who's voting. What are my qualifications?
And we definitely don't want
look,
voters intimidated at the polls.
Yes.
And that's what some of these challenger laws allow. That is not a good process. That is not good activity on Election Day.
Thanks, Alex.
Let's hope for no hanging chads.
Yes, indeed.
Alex Wagner, thank you so much.